Lu Zifeng's figure was thick. He wore a Taoist robe embroidered with pine trees, and he had an outstanding graceful bearing. He was a top expert in the outer court, an existence at the 8th on the All-Heaven Golden Rankings. As soon as he arrived at the Tao development grounds, he instantly caused an expanse of bustling noise. Presently, there were 8,000 senior students in the outer court, and 60% of them were at the mysterious Immortal realm, whereas only the remaining 40% were existences at the Golden Immortal realm. On the other hand, only 500 people were able to be ranked on the All-Heaven Golden Rankings. It was already rather difficult to accomplish this, yet Lu Zifeng hadn't just ascended onto the All-Heaven Golden Rankings, he was even ranked in the top 10. He was a top existence ranked at the 8th position. Such a figure that was proud as the sun and moon would cause exclaims of admiration no matter where he went. He wouldn't have come to spar with Xianxia, right? Someone joked, yet noticed that this joke wasn't funny at all in the end because everyone had perceived that Lu Zifeng had obviously come for Xianxia. This was the main reason why everyone exploded into an uproar. Xianxia noticed Lu Zifeng as well, and it was even to the extent that he'd heard the outer court's dean, Zhou Zhili, mention Lu Zifeng on the first day he entered the academy. Lu Zifeng was only at the intermediate stage of the mysterious Immortal realm when he entered the outer court, yet he utilized around 400 years of time to advance into the Golden Immortal realm. After that, he spent almost another 300 years to become ranked in the top 50. Up until now, he'd already cultivated in the outer court for 916 years, and he possessed the position of 8th. Perhaps Lu Zifeng's accomplishments weren't really extraordinary when compared to others, yet his rankings were sufficient to display exactly how formidable he was. Stomp! Stomp! Lu Zifeng's footsteps were neither fast nor slow as he walked straight towards the Tao development ground that Xianxia was at. His expression was calm, and no emotion could be discerned from it. Yet along with his footsteps resounding through the air, the bustling noise actually softened gradually before becoming perfectly silent. After that, Lu Zifeng stopped outside the grounds and said, "I'll spar with you." His voice was calm and didn't contain any emotion. But when these words entered into the ears of everyone else, it instantly caused them to explode into an uproar and were unable to maintain their silence any longer. He actually really came for the sake of sparring with Xianxia. How despicable! He's obviously bullying the young and weak. He's a golden immortal that's even ranked at the 8th of the All-Heaven Golden Rankings. Yet he has come to spar with Xianxia? He's obviously a bully. It's not necessarily the case. This is the mysterious immortal area of the Tao Development Reserve. Even if senior brother Lu Zifeng participates in the spars, his cultivation will be suppressed to the mysterious immortal realm. Could it be that you haven't noticed that he came to take revenge for his Tao companion Lu Yiming? Earlier, Xianxia whipped Lu Yiming and caused her to lose all face. As her Tao companion, how can Lu Zifeng possibly watch indifferently? However, he's going too far by doing this. So what if his cultivation is suppressed? His immortal force and combat technique aren't affected, and it's sufficient to crush any mysterious immortal. Lu Zifeng acted indifferent towards all the discussions, criticism, and contempt from the surroundings. His expression was calm to the extreme, and it revealed how firm and strong his heart was. He just looked at Xianxia and awaited Xianxia's answer. It seemed as if that besides Xianxia, there wasn't anything in the entire heavens and the earth that could arouse his interest, so it was naturally impossible for anything to disturb his mind. Xianxia stared at Lu Zifeng for a long time before he said, "What's the bet?" Yes, Xianxia didn't answer him directly at all, yet Xianxia had already given his answer. When it entered into the ears of everyone in the surroundings, besides feeling surprised, a wisp of a complicated feeling arose in their hearts. It was very difficult for them to imagine how a new student could be so composed and confident, and even so indifferent when facing an expert on the All-Heaven Golden Rankings that had made a name for himself a long time ago. Originally, Liang Ren and Gu Yueming intended to disregard everything and stop Xianxia from sparring with Lu Zifeng. But Xianxia had already agreed before they could open their mouths, and it caused them to be stunned on the spot. Besides feeling worried in their hearts, they couldn't help but have a strange feeling. Perhaps this is exactly the reason why Xianxia has obtained his current accomplishments. He dares to do what others dare not. It was even to the extent that they didn't have any doubt that even if Xianxia were to lose, Xianxia would be renowned through the academy because of this battle, and Xianxia would be respected by numerous students. Humph! He's courting death. In the crowd, only Jun and the others laughed coldly and endlessly in their hearts. As far as they were concerned, Xianxia didn't have any chance at all and was bound to be crushed, even if his failure wouldn't cause any material harm to his reputation. But Xianxia had lost in the end and hadn't left victorious. This was sufficient. When facing Xianxia's question, Lu Zifeng remained calm and composed as before. "I'll bet as much as you do." Xianxia nodded and said, "All right." As he spoke, he turned to the white-haired old man and said casually, 1,000,000. 1,000,000. The eyeballs of everyone present here almost fell out of their sockets because this wasn't cabbage that could be found all over the streets. This was the star points of Dao Emperor Academy. How can he casually toss it out like that? This fellow is definitely mad. Many people thought like this. What a joke. Even a golden immortal would need at least half a year or more to gather 1,000,000 star points after various expenses and deductions are included. But now, Xianxia had still put up high stakes and thrown out 1,000,000 star points in this situation where he was clearly aware that he had no hope of winning. So wasn't he mad? There were also some people that were astounded by how wealthy Xianxia was. He didn't seem like a new student that had just entered the academy at all, and he was even more wealthy than some senior students instead, so it caused their eyes to go red with envy. When he heard this shocking number, Lu Zifeng's expression that was usually calm had finally changed slightly. He raised his head to glance at Xianxia before he said, "All right, I'll make this bet with you. A bet can't be taken back once it's made." The white-haired old man couldn't help but remind them. Xianxia and Lu Zifeng used silence to display that they wouldn't change their bets or minds. The white-haired old man didn't advise them any further when he saw this, and he recorded their bets before withdrawing the formation disk and activating the restrictions around the Dao development ground. The fluctuations of the restrictions arose and resounded through the surroundings, and it converged the hearts and minds of everyone onto the grounds. At that place, Xianxia and Lu Zifeng were already standing in confrontation from afar. The fluctuations of the restrictions on the grounds seemed to emanate a shapeless pressure. Xianxia acutely noticed that Lu Zifeng's cultivation was suppressed to the mysterious immortal realm, and Lu Zifeng had lost the unique aura that belonged to a golden immortal. It really is like that. Even though his cultivation has been suppressed, his immortal force, vital energy, and even the strength of his soul is still maintained at the golden immortal realm. Xianxia was shocked by this, yet he wasn't afraid. Conversely, his gaze suddenly lit up while shocking battle intent was accumulating within his eyes. At this moment, Xianxia didn't have any other thoughts in his mind but battle. He didn't come here today to spar, and he'd just come to express his grievance from the injustice Liang Ran and Gu Yueming suffered. Moreover, he'd come so that no one would dare recklessly implicate his companions again. So he had to win this battle, and he had to win it beautifully. He had to make everyone present clearly aware and see that even though he, Xianxia, wasn't a disciple from a top power, he wasn't a ripe persimmon that anyone could squash. Xianxi's heart has transformed. Zhou Zhili spoke abruptly. The other instructors were stunned as they didn't understand what Zhou Zhili meant. A change in one's mental state under such circumstances will probably be unable to turn the situation around, right? Bang Xianxia took the initiative to attack. At this moment, the energy, essence, and spirit in his entire body surged like flames. He was bathed beneath dazzling divine radiance as he formed a sword with his fingers, and then a sword of water that had attained perfection slashed down. The sword chi was like a clear ocean that surged and rumbled through the sky. It seemed like fiend gods were howling while it carried boundlessly powerful might. Lu Zifeng's eyes lit up. At this instant, he seemed like a peerless blade that had left its sheath, and he was unrestrained like a great god of devils. His cultivation was suppressed, yet it didn't mean that his ability was suppressed. So he naturally perceived that the young man before him was a formidable enemy, and noticing that there was such a formidable young man at the mysterious immortal realm caused great waves to even arise in his heart. Cloud Soar Palm. Lu Zifeng stretched out his right hand while his slender fingers stroked the air lightly, and it carried dazzling radiance as it destroyed everything, as if it was sweeping through dead leaves and completely dispersed Xianxi's sword of water. Xianxi's eyes lit up. His strength really is formidable. Xianxi's aura instantly erupted once more and became even more formidable. He'd completely circulated his cultivation that was an entire 100 times deeper than his peers, and his imposing aura was like a sovereign that had descended to the world with might that deterred the heavens and the earth. This kid really is extraordinary. Lu Zifeng's eyes narrowed slightly as he slapped out with his palm. Deep immortal force surged as it crushed down towards Xianxi, and it even caused violent wailing and fluctuations to arise in the surrounding space. Bang! The two of them were locked in fierce battle. One of them was like a great god of devil that was unrestrained and arrogant. The other was like a sovereign that patrolled his lands and ruled the world. Both of them caused resplendent radiance to erupt successively, and it shook the entire Dao development grounds, causing even the restrictions that enveloped the surroundings to tremble to the point of droning. Rise! Outside the grounds, the white-haired old man hurriedly withdrew the formation disk and activated another layer of restrictions, and only then did the fluctuations within the grounds finally stabilize. Everyone exclaimed with admiration in perfect silence. They stared fixedly at the battlefield as they were deeply afraid of missing the slightest detail because a fight of such level was extremely rare. Originally, most of them felt that Xianxi would definitely be in a disadvantageous position, yet never had they imagined that Xianxi wasn't inferior at all when facing Lu Zifeng. At this moment, every single move Xianxi made carried the style of a supreme grandmaster. Even though he had a young appearance, his steady and composed aura caused the hearts of everyone to tremble. Lu Zifeng felt a trace of pressure as well. This caused him to be surprised. Yet he wasn't in a panic, and he dealt with it and fought Xianxi in a composed manner. As a golden immortal that had cultivated in the outer court for almost 1,000 years, even though his cultivation was suppressed at the mysterious immortal realm, his combat technique wasn't suppressed at all. Bang! Another violent collision occurred once more. Xianxi's fingers that were pressed into a sword spun as his attacks became even more overbearing and domineering. So long as it was within the mysterious immortal realm, then he had absolute confidence and firmly believed that he could crush all opponents, and he was invincible. This was a type of battle mentality, unyielding pride that was branded within his bones, and it was a form of absolute grasp and understanding of his strength. Therefore, he attacked with big movements while he advanced courageously. It seemed like the sword Dao in his palm was sharp to the point it was unstoppable, and he revealed an imposing aura of sweeping through the surroundings to reign supreme. Lu Zifeng was moved once more. It truly is rare for someone to actually possess such a domineering battle intent at the mysterious immortal realm. In the blink of an eye, Xianxi had already fought intensely with Lu Zifeng and collided with him for more than a few hundred times, causing the hearts and minds of everyone in the surroundings to shake while they were unable to maintain their composure any longer. This was absolutely an unparalleled battle in the mysterious immortal realm. One party to the battle was the first amongst the new students this year. He possessed extraordinary combat strength and was practically invincible amongst his peers. Moreover, he grew stronger as the battle progressed, causing others to be unable to discern exactly where his limits lay. The other party to the battle was a golden immortal ranked at the 8th of the all-heaven golden rankings. His cultivation had been suppressed, yet his immortal force and combat technique weren't suppressed. An intense battle between these two was being carried out at this moment, so how could it not move them all? Bang! Divine radiance sprayed throughout the Dao development grounds. Xianxi's sword that was formed from his fingers tore through the sky while the swords of the 5 elements were executed at will. He fought intensely with Lu Zifeng in an overbearing and domineering manner. In the mysterious immortal realm, Xianxi was unstoppable and overwhelming indeed. He was extremely outstanding and had surpassed numerous figures from the ancient times, and he seemed to possess an aura of matchlessness. However, his opponent wasn't a true mysterious immortal realm expert, but a golden immortal whose cultivation had been suppressed to the mysterious immortal realm. Moreover, he was a top existence amongst golden immortals. So in the battle with Xianxi, He dealt with every move struck against him and didn't fall into a disadvantageous position at all. In other words, both of them weren't ordinary mysterious immortals, so their battle could naturally be considered as unparalleled. It was very rare for a battle like this to occur even in the ancient times until now. This caused everyone present in the surroundings to be dazzled by this sight. Their minds and hearts were shocked repeatedly, and they practically forgot to breathe. Xianxia already possesses unrivaled might in this cultivation realm, Zhou Zhili commented from afar. Unfortunately, once Lu Zifeng exerts his true strength, he'll still be unable to escape defeat. Zhuo Hong's expression was slightly gloomy as he spoke. Zhou Zhili smiled and didn't speak any further. Is it so difficult for this fellow to defeat someone at the mysterious immortal realm? Why waste so much time bitterly exhausting your strength with him? On the other side, Zhuo couldn't help but feel slightly restless. Xianxia was actually fighting Lu Zifeng equally, and Lu Zifeng hadn't crushed Xianxia right away. This caused him to be extremely displeased in his heart. Clang! Clang! At practically the exact same time, Xianxia and Lu Zifeng, who were in battle, had withdrawn their respective immortal artifacts. Lu Zifeng held an immortal sword that was snow-white and seemed like silver. It was over 1 meter long, 2 fingers wide, and completely crystalline. As soon as it left its sheath, it was like a scorching sun rising into the sky, and it illuminated the entire surroundings. Extreme Yang Dao Sword. Senior brother Lu Zifeng is finally going to utilize his full strength? According to rumor, the Extreme Yang Dao Sword and Extreme Yin Dao Swords are a pair of ancient immortal artifacts that resonate with both Yin and Yang. Once they're utilized, they can even rely on the supreme Great Yang Star and Great Yin Star's quintessence energy. The spirits of all the senior students of the outer court was refreshed, and they became excited. That's clear radiance that soars into the sky with sword chi that's dazzling like the stars. Its might is definitely at the cosmic grade as well. This is senior brother Xianxia's immortal artifact? At this moment, many new students saw the immortal sword in Xianxia's hands clearly. It was ancient and seemed ordinary like any other immortal sword. But when this sword was held in Xianxia's hand, the body of the sword actually transformed into a vast starry sky that emanated piercingly cold starlight, causing it to be dazzling and resplendent like stars that filled the sky. Merely based on this alone, it wasn't inferior to the Extreme Yang Dao sword at all. Star Clasp. Isn't this Hua Jiankong's sword? There were a few senior instructors amongst the people present that recognized the sword in Xianxia's hand, and all of their pupils constricted while they felt extremely surprised. All those years ago, the dean bestowed Star Clasp to Hua Jiankong when his cultivation in the Sword Dao attained the level of Sword God. Now, Hua Jiankong has actually handed this sword to Xianxia. In the distance, Zhou Zhili's heart shook as well while his eyes narrowed. He faintly sensed that something he was unaware of seemed to have happened to Xianxia. He was clearly aware that Star Clasp wasn't just a treasure with mysterious might. It even carried an unusual meaning because it was a sword bestowed by the dean. Zhuo Hong acutely noticed that Zhou Zhili's expression had become slightly strange, and he couldn't help but be bewildered in his heart. However, he didn't notice any inkling from the sword in Xianxia's hand. After all, Hua Jiankong followed by the dean's side all year long, and he could be considered as another elusive existence within the academy, whereas merely a few people had the chance to see him fight. Therefore, even fewer people were able to recognize Star Clasp. Moreover, with Zhuo Hong's status and seniority, he didn't have the qualifications to know all of this. Bang! 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 While everyone engaged in animated discussion, Xianxia and Lu Zifeng entered once more into combat. Since they entered into battle, the two of them had finally utilized immortal artifacts, and the situation of the battle was even more intense than before. Everywhere the eye could see was sword chi that filled the sky, and it seemed as if it was about to penetrate through the sky. Evening blaze! Lu Zifeng shouted loudly as he finally erupted for real. The Extreme Yang Dao sword danced about in the sky like a blazing sun, yet it emanated a glow that was like blood instead. It was like the glow of the setting sun, and it revealed an energy that was sorrowful, murderous, and caused everything to return to silence. The sword of wood. Xianxia was calm while the space between his brows was filled with a murderous aura. Star-clasp soared through the sky as it emanated surging wood aura that was filled with exuberant vitality that was practically boundless. Every single strand of sword chi seemed to grow in strength along with the passage of time. This was the laws of wood that possessed endless vitality, and its might rose steadily along with the passage of time. Rumble. Their attacks collided. Fire originally countered wood, yet now it seemed like the wildfire was unable to incinerate the wood before more grew along with the spring breeze. Xianxia's sword of wood was extremely tenacious, and it coiled around and spread through the blood-red sun that covered the sky before shattering it into powder. A ferocious glow flashed in Lu Zifeng's eyes. He was slightly surprised that his opponent actually grew more formidable and courageous as the battle carried out, and it infuriated him. Originally, if he circulated the Yangfire all-heaven divine crest amongst the laws of a golden immortal during that strike from before, then its might could have doubled. Yet now that his cultivation was suppressed, he could only utilize the laws of Yang, and it caused him to be slightly aggrieved in his heart. But he never thought about that when compared to Xianxia. His immortal force and combat techniques from the golden immortal realm had already occupied an extremely great advantage. Swoosh! 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 Lu Zifeng was infuriated. He swung the extreme Yang Dao sword repeatedly, causing its slashes to crisscross horizontally and vertically, and he'd gone all out. Some of these strands of sword chi were like the gleam of dawn. Some were like the scorching sun that hung high above the sky at noon. Some were like the setting sun at dusk above the desert. All of them revealed the profundities of the laws of Yang, and it seemed to have transformed the Dao development grounds into a chaotic furnace. Unfortunately, these attacks were dispersed by Xianxia with the sword of water, sword of wood, sword of fire, sword of earth, and sword of metal, and it was utterly unable to suppress Xianxia at all. On the other hand, this string of attacks caused all the spectators of the battle to be shocked. At this point in the fierce battle, Lu Zifeng's expression had finally become serious while a murderous expression appeared between his brows, and his heart was filled with rage. Clang! In the next moment, another sword had appeared in Lu Zifeng's hand. It was a sword that was pitch black like the night sky, and it was suffused with icy coldness. The extreme Yin Dao sword. As soon as the sword appeared, it actually formed a link with the extreme Yang Dao sword, and they seemed to reflect each other and caused resonance of both Yang and Yin to occur. Instantly, Lu Zifeng's imposing aura rose explosively once more. He was like a god that held Yin in his left hand and Yang in his right. Black and white reflected each other while their divine light coiled around his body. He actually forced senior brother Lu Zifeng to utilize the Yin and Yang Dao swords. All the senior students present here were moved and extremely horrified. None of them had expected that in this battle where there was bound to be a great gap in strength, Xianxia's display would actually be so formidable and dazzling. Originally, they felt that Xianxia would definitely be easily defeated by Lu Zifeng, who had the absolute advantage within an extremely short period of time. Yet it just so happened that Xianxia had persisted until now and fought Lu Zifeng equally. After that, they felt that Xianxia would definitely be unable to resist Lu Zifeng's might once he utilized the extreme Yang Dao sword. Yet it just so happened that Xianxia persisted miraculously once more. All of this had exceeded the expectations of most people. It was like an ant shaking an enormous tree, yet the tree had really been shaken in the end, or a mantis trying to stop a cart, yet had actually not been crushed to death in the end. When it was unexpected, there would be surprise. When there was surprise, there would be bewilderment. And where there was bewilderment, there would be shock. Because it was the unknown, and the unknown was the source of fear. Everyone present here couldn't be considered to be fearful, yet they were surprised by Xianxia's display. They were unable to appraise or evaluate him, and it was like a freak that was impossible to figure out had appeared right before their eyes. I knew that Xianxia wouldn't enter a fight he wasn't confident in. Win, win, win. Senior brother Xianxia, so long as you win, I'll become Dao companions with you. All the new students present here didn't care about all of this while they cheered Xianxia on excitedly, and some young women's beautiful eyes even flowed with light while they bravely expressed their adoration towards Xianxia. A young woman from the western barbaric continent's split-cloud bird clans was even more daring, and she directly shouted in a sharp voice, "All of you better not fight for him with me. I'm going to have children with senior brother Xianxia." It caused an uproar and drew numerous strange gazes over. Yet the young woman raised her head and chest high while filled with a wild nature, and she didn't care at all. She was calm as before when facing all of this, whereas Lu Zifeng's expression became even gloomier. Yin Yang cross. Lu Zifeng's black and white swords crisscrossed with each other to tear open a cross in space. Half of it was Yin while the other half was Yang, and it revealed an icy cold and murderous energy of judgment that terrified the soul. Overlapping the laws. Lu Zifeng has actually attained perfection in 2 laws. Unfortunately, his ability in the Sword Dao is far inferior when compared to the infinite divine talisman. These thoughts flashed within Xianxia's heart. In the next moment, his gaze shot out like 2 bolts of cold lightning, while his entire body blazed with divine radiance, and various comprehensions in the Tao of the sword surged in his heart within this instant. Some were from the might of the 3 points Hua Jiankong struck against him. Some came from the various profundities related to the inheritances of the swords of the 5 elements from the infinite divine talisman. There were even things that Xianxia learned from his own sword Dao and sword heart. All of these comprehensions flashed within his heart in this instant. In the next moment, the star-clasp immortal sword in his hand stabbed lightly in space. Swish! As the strike struck out, water and fire fused together. The glow of fire and water danced about together while condensing to the limit, and they were suffused with a gorgeous and dazzling glow. When looked at from afar, it was like an ethereal flowing ray of light from the outer realm had flashed into appearance. Bang! This sword strike was like an arrow that was accurately shot by a grandmaster in the Tao of archery, and it pierced towards the absolute center of the cross-shaped yin-yang cross with great power. It was like an arrow that had hit the bullseye. After that, a wave of rumbling erupted as the yin and yang sword chi collapsed before transforming into fine flows of air that swept towards the surroundings. Whereas Xianxia's strike didn't lose momentum at all as it flew directly towards the center of Lu Zifeng's forehead. Hiss! This sword strike of Xianxia's carried a fierce and swift impetus as it overlapped the sword of water and sword of fire. Its might had increased explosively by over 2 times, and it instantly shot towards the center of Lu Zifeng's forehead. Lu Zifeng was horrified. Never had he imagined that Xianxia would actually be able to grasp the profundity of overlapping the laws while at the mysterious immortal realm, and even his ultimate move, yin-yang cross, was unable to obstruct it at all. Darkness / Even though thoughts flashed within his mind, Lu Zifeng's movements weren't slow at all, and the yin and yang swords crisscrossed before him before he slashed down with them. Swoosh! Swoosh! The heavens and the earth seemed to have been slashed into 2 at this moment. Half was like pitch-black night while the other was bright like the day, and as the strikes intersected each other, the laws of yin and yang rumbled. Bang! The sword chi collided with each other and transformed into a terrifying fluctuation that swept towards the surroundings and drowned the entire Tao development grounds. It caused all the restrictions in the surroundings to tremble violently and wait without end. This obviously showed how terrifying the collision from before was. Everyone present here was shocked when they saw this scene. It was understandable that Lu Zifeng had grasped the method of overlapping the laws. After all, he was a golden immortal. But Xianxia had actually grasped this method as well, and this beyond their expectations. Normally, one could start comprehending the method of overlapping the laws once one had attained perfection in at least 2 types of Grand Tao laws. Unfortunately, not to mention comprehending the method of overlapping the laws, most experts found it difficult to even attain perfection in a Grand Tao law. They were the laws after all and was from the Heaven Tao. Even though everyone present here was a genius disciple that had experienced numerous tests to enter Tao Emperor Academy, it was extremely difficult to accomplish this. Under normal circumstances, most experts only had the ability to accomplish this after they advanced into the Golden Immortal Realm, whereas it was very rare for one to be able to grasp the method of overlapping the laws while still at the mysterious immortal realm like Xianxia, and it was even rare within Tao Emperor Academy. No wonder Xianxia wasn't afraid of Lu Zifeng. So it turns out that he has grasped such ability. Many people exclaimed with admiration in their hearts. They finally understood that Xianxia wasn't as simple as they'd imagined. Conversely, his display had repeatedly exceeded their expectations, and it caused all of them to be unable to figure out exactly how many trump cards he possessed. Damn it! How could this fellow be strong to such an extent? In the crowd, Zuoqiu Jun's expression was gloomy, while an indescribable feeling that the situation was bad arose in his heart. After developing to such an extent, the situation had already completely exceeded his control. Now, he could only pray in his heart that Lu Zifeng would be able to control the situation of the battle. On the Dao development grounds, Lu Zifeng's expression was heavy. Even though he'd stopped Xianxia's strike from before, Xianxia's combat strength that rose steady caused him to feel a trace of danger. He didn't dare let his mind run wild and tried his best to maintain his calm. Similarly, he didn't dare be careless in the slightest. Xianxia, who stood before him, had already become a great opponent in his heart. Hiss! 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 Meanwhile, Xianxia charged over once more from afar. No matter if it was the discussions in the surroundings or the changes in the expression of his opponent Lu Zifeng, Xianxia was indifferent to it all. Or perhaps he was still in a state of comprehension at this moment. Facing an opponent like Lu Zifeng had completely stimulated Xianxia's potential, and he discarded all distracting thoughts while only the sword remained in his heart. My heart is like the sword. The heaven and earth are mine to control. Numerous comprehensions of the sword Dao surged throughout Xianxia. His eyes became bright like a sword while every single pore on his body surged with pure and fierce sword insight. His entire body seemed as if it had transformed into a sword. The star clasp in his hand was suffused with starlight, and it was like a vast and flowing river of stars. It emanated sword howls that surged like tidewater and resounded through the heavens and the earth. In the next moment, numerous strands of brilliant sword chi soared into the sky, the sword of fire and water, the sword of earth and wood, the sword of fire and metal, the sword of water and earth. The inheritances of the swords of the 5 elements from the infinite divine talisman had been successfully overlapped by Xianxia. The laws intersected and transformed into numerous completely new techniques. Moreover, their might multiplied and rose explosively as well. Clang, 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 clang. Lu Zifeng dodged as he resisted Xianxia's attacks with all his might. His eyes had suddenly dilated while he sensed heavy pressure. Moreover, this sort of pressure was growing as time passed, and it faintly showed signs of completely suppressing him. This caused his expression to become even heavier while his heart even couldn't help from surging with tempestuous waves. How could this be possible? How could this fellow's combat strength possibly increase during battle? Could it be that a golden immortal like me is going to lose at the hands of a new student that has just entered the academy? This won't do. I can't lose. Lu Zifeng gritted his teeth, and his heart was filled with madness while under this pressure that gradually increased. Xianxia's sword moves tore through the sky and swept through the entire grounds while becoming sharper and sharper. It was even to the extent that the distant spectators noticed that the might of Xianxia's sword chi was obviously growing at a gradual pace. Moreover, the glow of his sword seemed to become sharper and sharper, and it was even to the extent that it gradually had a life of its own. It was constantly strengthening. The might of his sword moves was improving constantly as well. He's actually tempering and comprehending the sword Dao in battle. Xianxia's potential is truly terrifying. Many people were extremely shocked in their hearts. If he isn't stopped, then Lu Zifeng will probably lose. The insight of the sword, the might of the sword, and the spirit of the sword is constantly increasing, and it faintly shows signs of controlling the world with the sword while the heart and sword are like one. Could it be that he's going to step into the level of sword god today? In the distance, Zhou Zhili stared fixedly at Xianxia without blinking as he was deeply afraid of missing the slightest detail. No wonder even Hua Jiankong gave starclasp to him. The sword Dao, the grand Dao with the highest lethality amongst the 3,000 grand Daos, and it was peerlessly swift and powerful. Sword immortals were even renowned in the immortal dimension for their shocking combat strength, and they were existences that were known for having the greatest destructive force. But those that were able to attain an enlightened sword heart and attain the level of Grandmaster in the Sword Tao were 1 in a million. Those that were able to attain the level of Supreme Grandmaster where a single strike could destroy all techniques were like phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. And those that were able to attain the level of Sword God where the heart was like the sword were even difficult to find amongst a billion. Besides willpower and comprehension ability, attaining the level of Sword God stressed upon fortune. On the Tao development grounds, the battle between Xianxia and Lu Zifeng grew more and more intense, and it had already arrived at its peak. Even though Lu Zifeng tried his best to deal with the pressure that increased without end, he was obviously showing signs of being completely suppressed. Ah! A ferocious light flashed in Lu Zifeng's eyes, and he went completely berserk. His yin and yang swords suddenly stabbed towards the space in front of him, and then 2 strands of vast energy of the stars suddenly descended from the boundless universe. One strand was of extreme yin, the other of extreme yang, and they traversed boundless space to pour into the yin and yang Tao swords. Yin-yang disorder. This move draws upon the energy of the great yang and great yin stars, and its senior brother Lu Zifeng's trump card. I never expected that he would actually utilize it at this moment. The crowd cried out involuntarily in shock. Destroy! At this moment, the star-clasp Immortal sword moved as well. A strand of sword chi that contained the laws of metal, water, and earth condensed into form before moving to meet Lu Zifeng's attack. As it was said, metal was used to obtain water, water wet the earth, and the earth contained metal. When these 3 laws were overlapped, its might repeatedly rose explosively, and its impetus was vast to the extreme. Bang! The attacks rumbled with a bang as they collided. The energy of the stars drawn down by the yin and yang Tao swords were directly slashed into 2 while Xianxia's brilliant strand of sword chi swept forward while whistling through the air before blasting the distant Lu Zifeng flying. Lu Zifeng's figure struck hard onto the restrictions of the grounds while blood sprayed ceaselessly from his mouth, and he didn't have the strength to get up any longer. Everyone was shocked. Xianxia is victorious. The white-haired old man's voice instantly resounded. At the same time, he hurriedly withdrew the formation disc and activated the restrictions to send Lu Zifeng out. It couldn't be helped. He was truly worried that Xianxia would kill Lu Zifeng. I've actually lost. The eyes of Lu Zifeng, who struggled for a long time and finally stood up, were slightly dim. He glanced at the distant Xianxia before leaving with a bent figure. The entire Tao development grounds were silent, and then various sounds of discussion arose. He lost. Even senior brother Lu Zifeng, who's ranked at the 8th of the All-Heaven Golden rankings, has lost. What should we do now? How could this be possible? How could that new student be such a freak? For a time, the crowd exploded into an uproar, and they were filled with extreme disbelief and shock. Good. Senior brother Xianxia, nicely done. How amazing. Senior brother Xianxia is awesome. All the new students were overjoyed while they shouted Xianxia's name, and they couldn't help but reveal fervent adoration. Good. Zhou Zhili clapped as he spoke, and his reserved and stern face actually carried a wisp of undisguised praise at this moment. On the other hand, Zuoqiu Hong's face twitched fiercely, and then he opened his mouth yet didn't speak in the end. What a truly useless idiot. A golden immortal ranked at the 8th of the All-Heaven rankings. He was actually unable to even subdue a new student. He has simply thrown the face of all senior students. Zuoqiu Jun roared madly in his heart, and he was unable to restrain his feelings any longer. Today, he'd first sent out Lu Yiming and the others, and for the sake of avoiding any mishaps from occurring, he sent the news to Lu Zifeng. Originally, all of these arrangements would have been sufficient to deal with any new student, yet never had he imagined that it was actually helpless against Xianxia. At this moment, as he listened to the bustling noise in the surroundings and watched the new students cheer together for Xianxia, even if he wasn't willing to admit it, Zuoqiu Jun was clearly aware that his operation to repress Xianxia had helped Xianxia gain success instead and caused Xianxia's reputation to experience an unprecedented increase. It was even to the extent that it wouldn't be long before the entire academy would probably know what had happened today, and they would know of Xianxia's dazzling display. Xianxia still remained calm towards all of this. He stood there silently for a long time, and he regulated the vital energy in his body while utilizing the dark parasol sapling to replenish the severely consumed immortal force in his body. The battle with Lu Zifeng was extremely difficult, and it caused him to be slightly exhausted. But he still had the strength to carry out another battle. As I said before, I'll accompany everyone until the end today. Does any other senior brother or senior sister wish to spar with me? After a short period of time, Xianxia's indifferent voice suddenly resounded, and it was like a gale that caused the bustling noise in the surroundings to stop abruptly wherever it passed. The atmosphere was perfectly silent. All the senior students glanced at each other, and no one answered him after a long time. Since there's no one who wishes to spar with me, then junior brother will be leaving. As soon as he finished speaking, Xianxia turned around and left swiftly while bringing Liang Ran and Gu Yueming along with him. As they watched the three of them leave, the crowd automatically opened up a path and no one dared to obstruct them. After he left the Dao Development Reserve, Xianxia bid his farewells to Liang Ran and Gu Yueming before returning to his own abode. After the spars that occurred today, those senior students from the outer court will probably not look for trouble with me again. I have to work hard and prepare for the inner court exam 2 years from now instead. As he sat cross-legged within his abode, Xianxia thought about everything that had occurred today, and he was able to determine that this string of challenges was definitely instigated by someone from behind the scenes, whereas there was utterly no need to think of the answer. It was definitely the Wuxia clan. Fortunately, this is Dao Emperor Academy. If it was in the outside world, then I would probably really be unable to resist the repeated attacks of the Wuxia clan like this. Senior sister once said that when I possessed the identity of a student in Dao Emperor Academy, then the Wuxia clan would suffer various restraints when intending to deal with me. So during this period in the academy, I must make the best use of my time and strengthen myself. Time. I lack time the most now. No matter if it's becoming stronger or launching my revenge against the Wuxia clan, I have to make the best use of every single second. When the Wuxia clan feels that I'm showing signs of possessing the strength to threaten then they'll definitely stop at nothing to strike a blow against me. After pondering for a long time, Xianxia took a deep breath before his expression returned once more to calm, and then he turned around and entered the world of stars. The successive battles in the Dao Development Reserve today had allowed him to obtain a great deal of star points, and the most important point was that he'd comprehended the method to overlap the laws. Now, what he had to do was continue comprehending the method of overlapping the laws and strive to improve his combat strength as quickly as possible. At the same time that Xianxia entered into closed-door cultivation, the news about his string of battles at the Dao Development Reserve swiftly spread throughout the academy as if it had grown wings. The #1 expert amongst the new students of the outer court. Even senior brother Lu Zifeng, who was the 8th on the All-Heaven Golden rankings, wasn't a match for him during a spar at the Dao Development Reserve. It can be said that he's an unparalleled existence at the mysterious Immortal realm. Who is it? Idiot, it's naturally Xianxia. Discussions like this didn't just spread throughout the outer court, even the inner court, Pill Reserve, Scripture Reserve, and other such places resounded with such discussions. It was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples, and it caused Xianxia's reputation to be like the sun in the midday sky, and it was known to numerous students and instructors. Unparalleled amongst his peers? Haha! During the recruitment tests of the academy, he was able to pass the 3rd round of the test while at the initial stage of the mysterious Immortal realm. He wouldn't be worthy to be the first if he was unable to accomplish this. In an abode, Ji Xianbing looked at the information that was just sent to him and exploded into laughter. After that, he seemed to have thought of something and muttered after pondering deeply. I'm only concerned about whether he'll be able to advance into the Golden Immortal realm within 2 years. It was the Wuxia clan again? Unfortunately, they boosted Xianxia's prestige instead. They truly went for wool but came home shorn. How laughable! In the depths of a luxuriant, elegant, and clean forest within the Scripture Reserve was numerous ancient and towering parasol trees. This was the residence of the head instructor of the Scripture Reserve, Zhao Taisai. Zhao Taisai was the name of an old phoenix from the Phoenix clan that had lived for countless years. She possessed unfathomable strength, and she was known to all in the academy. According to rumor, Zhao Taisai was already an instructor of the Scripture Reserve while she was still a student. She was so senior that only the other head instructor of the Scripture Reserve, the Dragon Dimension's Green Dragon ancestor, could compare to her. This area that was covered in ancient parasol trees was the residence of Zhao Taisai, and it was called the Parasol Forest. Because she had a violent and disagreeable temper, practically no one dared to step foot into this place without obtaining her permission. But at this moment, Zhao Mingli, who wore a fiery red dress, was sitting cross-legged beneath a parasol tree that seemed to hold up the sky and cover it, and she was looking through a transmission jade slip. The golden immortal realm isn't so easily attained. Will you be able to produce another miracle within a mere 2 years of time? No matter what, the inner court test will be too boring without you, the first amongst the new students. Zhao Mingli put down the jade slip in her hands while she focused her gaze towards the distant mountains, and her peerlessly beautiful and proud face revealed a wisp of deep contemplation. Start charging into the golden immortal realm 3 days from now. I just got news that the little monk from the Buddha dimension has stepped into the golden immortal realm just now, and he is headed to the all-heaven golden rankings to determine his ranking. Suddenly, a chilly and bone-piercing voice resounded by her ears. The voice was very pleasing to the ear, like a gurgling stream in an empty gorge, yet it carried an indescribably ancient and dignified aura. Zhao Mingli's heart shook. Zhenlu has already stepped into the golden immortal realm? After that, she took a deep breath before her expression recovered its tranquility, and then she nodded lightly. Don't worry, ancestor. I'll be able to step into the golden immortal realm 3 days from now. An unpolished piece of jade is good for nothing. Come look for me when you enter the inner court. Within the scripture pavilion of the Scripture Reserve, a deep, hoarse, and low voice that revealed supreme dignity resounded. The words spoken by this voice seemed very simple, yet every single one of them contained a myriad of variations. Thus it was extremely unique and faintly showed signs of being in accordance with the Tao. This was the language of the dragons. As it was said, every single sound amongst the 8 sounds of the dragon contained the profundities of the heaven Tao, and it had become a unique technique of the dragon dimension. It allowed them to completely stand supreme above the numerous other clans and living beings and look down upon all others. Ancestor! Outside the scripture pavilion, the expression of Ao Wuming, who knelt on the ground, changed slightly, and he cried out loudly in an anxious tone. Go! You're not allowed to take a single step into this place before you step foot into the inner court. Rumble! Accompanying the heavy aura that revealed supreme dignity was a shapeless force that swept out, and it carried Ao Wuming, who was on the ground, and caused him to vanish instantaneously. Conversations like these didn't just happen between Zhao Mingli or Ao Wuming, and the others like Zhongli Sun, Jiang Songhai, and Ma Qiyan, who were ranked in the top 10 of the recruitment tests, had more or less received the instructions of the seniors from the various powers they belonged to. After disciples from top powers like them entered the academy, they had a confirmed objective and would enter into closed-door cultivation to charge towards it. Because they had the support of the powers behind them, they could cultivate without any worries at all, and they didn't have to be entangled by numerous miscellaneous matters like ordinary students. Tao Seeker Mountain. This mountain was situated at the outer court of the academy. It was completely formed from the corpse of a colossal dragon turtle immortal beast, and it was like a vast expanse of land. A stone stele that shot into the sky stood towering on the mountain. Its surface was suffused with dazzling and resplendent brilliance, and it emanated an indescribable pressure that enveloped the entire mountain. This was the all-heaven golden rankings. The stone stele flickered with numerous golden lights that were inscribed on it, and it had become a form of supreme glory. At this moment, a handsome young monk who wore a moon-white monk's robe and had a tranquil expression was walking over with golden lotuses beneath his feet, and he arrived before the stone stele in an instant. This person was the Buddha dimension's Zhenlu. His gaze swept the surface of the stone stele and swept past the numerous names on it while his expression remained tranquil, and from the beginning until the end, no change had occurred in his expression. Zhenlu walked forward and flicked his sleeve lightly, causing a torrent of divine light to spray out and collide with the stone stele, and it emanated a strange droning. After that, A golden and brilliant light suddenly charged up from the bottom of the stone steel like a sharp arrow that was charging into the sky. It instantly arrived at the center of the stone steel, and its momentum didn't show any signs of weakening. The 312th, the 235th, the 146th. In the end, the golden light stopped at the position of the 35th, and then golden light erupted with a bang before an ancient sound of the Tao resounded. Zhenlu the 35th, less than a year in the academy. This sound seemed as if it came from above the sky, and it was grand and boundless. Its source was known, yet it swept towards the surroundings like a gale, and it passed through the numerous mountains and resounded throughout the outer court. After that, countless sounds of bustling noise resounded from all over. What? The 35th on the all-heaven golden rankings. Zhenlu is actually so formidable? He just entered the academy for less than 2 months of time, yet actually advanced to the golden immortal realm in one go. Moreover, he's even ranked at the 35th position on the all-heaven golden rankings. What a freak! What's going on today? Earlier, the first amongst the new students, Xianxia, experienced a string of battles and established his status as being unparalleled amongst his peers. Yet not long after, Zhenlu actually charged into the 35th position of the all-heaven golden rankings. The sounds of discussion rose and fell, and it was filled with shock and exclamations of admiration. On the other hand, at this moment, Zhenlu stared at his ranking while his expression was tranquil as before. In the end, he shook his head and left. There are still another 2 more years. Perhaps when I test myself 2 years from now, I'll be able to be ranked in the top 10. Xianxia, I hope you'll participate in the inner court exam as well, and I'll personally reclaim the position of first that should have belonged to me. This day was bound to be an extraordinary day for any student in the outer court. Xianxia engaged in fierce battle at the Tao Development Reserve and was renowned throughout the academy. Zhenlu advanced into the golden immortal realm and was ranked at the 35th of the all-heaven golden rankings. These 2 incidents were like barrels of gunpowder that caused a mighty uproar. This created great pressure for all the other senior students of the outer court as well. For example, the existences that were ranked in the top 50 of the all-heaven golden rankings and the senior students that intended to participate in the inner court exam 2 years from now didn't dare slack off after they witnessed the accomplishments of the new students that had joined the academy this year. Only those at the top 50 of the all-heaven golden rankings could participate in the inner court exam. The quota was already extremely small, so if they were to miss it, then they would have to wait for another 10 years. It was precisely because of this that from that day onward, all the students who were determined to participate in the inner court exam 2 years from now seemed to have become completely different people. They had either entered into closed-door cultivation or went on a frenzy to temper themselves outside the academy, and their objectives was to improve their strengths as quickly as possible so as to avoid losing the opportunity to enter the inner court 2 years from now. Xianxia wasn't aware of all of this. He was in closed-door cultivation, and he was making the best use of every single second he had to cultivate just like he'd planned. However, he was bound to be unable to cultivate in peace today as well. Because not long after he returned to his abode, someone had come to pay a visit again, and it was a friend that he was unable to refuse or feel angry towards. There were naturally many friends that Xianxia was unable to get angry with, and Xianxia was obviously one of them. As he gazed at Xianxia, who wore a green dress and smiled as she walked over with her hands behind her back, Xianxia asked with slight surprise, "What are you doing here?" Xianxia said as matter of course, "Everyone was cheering for you earlier, so I wouldn't be able to display my superiority if I came looking for you earlier." Xianxia rubbed his nose and was extremely amused. "Oh, you don't mind me wasting a bit of your cultivation time, right?" Xianxia blinked at him. Xianxia shrugged. "We're already so close. So is there any need for such courtesy?" Xianxia paused and smiled brilliantly. "You did brilliantly this time. You have both reputation and prestige now. I came here to congratulate you, but most importantly, I have something to discuss with you." After they chatted for a while, Xianxia directly spoke of the reason for her arrival. "I've heard a great deal of rumors that many student societies are trying their best to rope in the outstanding experts amongst the new students. I feel that you can't stay idle either. You must establish your own society." Strike while the iron is still hot, and you'll definitely be able to attain unexpected results. She paused for a moment and continued. Otherwise, if you miss this opportunity, then you'll have to wait until you enter the inner court. But at that time, the resources that are the new students would have probably have long been split up between the other societies, and it would be rather difficult for you to take in some elites. Xianxia was stunned. His brows knit together as he pondered deeply for a long time, and then he said, I don't have any idea about this matter now. I'm afraid that hastily establishing my own society will only... Xianxia smiled and interrupted him before he could finish. Don't worry, don't you have me? I'm free and unoccupied because I don't have to participate in the inner court exam. So I'll help you sort out this matter. Xianxia stared blankly at Xianxia, and he was at a loss for words. Since he'd known Xianxia until now, he'd noticed that he'd always been passively receiving her help. Yet when he wanted to repay her, he noticed that no words, action, or gift would repay it. So at this moment, his feelings were extremely complicated. Hey, tell me, what name do you intend to give your society? You don't have to bother about anything after you settle on a name. Xianxia turned around and avoided Xianxia's gaze as she spoke with a grin on her face. A name. Xianxia's attention was instantly diverted, and he contemplated with concentration for a long time. In the end, he laughed bitterly as he said, I better not. Even until now, Bai Kuei still feels that the name I gave him was horrible. Xianxia exploded with laughter, and she revealed a radiant dimple on her face. It really is horrible. Even I feel it was unfair to Bai Ku. Xianxia was embarrassed, and he said in his heart, It's only a name. The worse it sounds, the longer one will be able to survive. Why don't we call it the Chun Alliance? Xianxia looked at Xianxia with anticipation. The Chun Alliance? Xianxia shook his head and said, I'm not the only one in the academy that's surnamed Chun, so doing this will probably arouse the displeasure of the other students that are surnamed Chun. When he spoke up to hear, Xianxia suddenly thought of something, and her eyes lit up as she said, Then we'll call it the Star Alliance. The Chin, for the word star. It sounds exactly alike to your own surname, and it implies the meaning of a myriad of stars gathering together to shine brilliantly. Star Alliance. Xianxia stared blankly while feeling moved in his heart. In his days, he recalled that he'd obtained the Star Manor, cultivated the universe star's layer body-forging arts, and even inherited various divine abilities from the master of the manor like the Grand Astral Palm and the Starsky Wings. It seems that I'm indeed tied tightly by fate to the stars. Then it's decided. Xianxia bluntly agreed on his behalf when she saw that Xianxia was moved by the idea, and then she left swiftly as if she was in great haste. Obviously, she intended to make the best use of time and spread Xianxia's popularity to absorb others into the society. This little girl is even more diligent towards this than I am. A wisp of indescribable warmth surged out from Xianxia's heart as he watched Xianxia leave. Xianxia was completely unaware of what sort of profound and lasting effect this decision that was made between him and Xianxia in a few words would have on the three dimensions. At this moment, he was still a student in the outer court of Dao Emperor Academy, and he was still working hard and bustling about to forge his future. It was also after Xianxia left on this day that Xianxia fully entered into a state of closed-door cultivation. Within the abode, the tiny cauldron absorbed the primeval chaotic qi in silence. On the other hand, his clone accepted assignments in the Tao of Talismans all day and night to earn star points. It was precisely because of this that many people in the outside world misunderstood that Xianxia had no intent to participate in the inner court exam that was occurring in 2 years from now, and he had instead placed all his attention onto earning star points. Some people heaved a sigh of relief towards this, as they felt there was one less powerful adversary during the inner court exam. Some were disappointed by this as they felt that Xianxia was ignoring what should be prioritized, and he was delaying his path towards the Tao. Some were curious as they didn't understand why Xianxia was earning star points in such an insane manner, and exactly what was the reason for it. Was it for the sake of a precious treasure or a cultivation technique? In short, many people in the outside world knew that Xianxia was always earning star points, yet practically no one knew that Xianxia's main body had always been in closed-door cultivation while all of this was the actions of his clone. Flowers bloomed and fell, spring passed, and autumn arrived. Without his realizing it, a year had passed since the moment Xianxia entered the academy, yet 5 years had passed in the world of stars. On this day, Xianxia, who was meditating with his eyes closed in the world of stars, had suddenly opened them. He let out a long breath of foul air before the spirit, energy, and essence within his entire body became even more restrained and calm like an abyss. I've attained perfection in the advanced stage of the mysterious immortal realm. Unfortunately, I'm still lacking a critical factor. I never expected that the golden immortal realm would be so difficult to attain. Xianxia frowned as he muttered. In these past 5 years, he'd always been in closed-door cultivation, and he used most of his time to temper his cultivation while only spending a small amount of time on condensing the laws and comprehending the inheritances within the infinite divine talisman. But up until now, he was still unable to grasp the critical factor needed to advance and break through into the golden immortal realm. On the contrary, the various grand Tao profundities he'd grasped were already condensed into the laws. Moreover, not only was he able to overlap the 5 elements, he'd even comprehended the inheritances of wind, lightning, yin, and yang from the infinite divine talisman. Merely based on his current strength, he would absolutely be able to easily defeat Lu Zifeng, who was suppressed at the mysterious immortal realm. Unfortunately, even if he'd cultivated within the world of stars for 5 years, he was still unable to advance into the golden immortal realm. The golden immortal realm was a divide in the path of immortality, and it was extremely difficult to surmount, just like the rebirth realm was for cultivators in the mortal dimension. However, once he did advance, he would possess the strength to rule over an area, and he could be considered a pillar of the immortal dimension. The golden immortal realm was divided into 3 levels: the all-heaven level, the embody heaven level, and the Brahma heaven level. The reason it was differentiated with the word heaven was obvious because every advancement of a level was like surmounting and transcending to a completely new world. These 3 levels were also simply called the initial stage, intermediate stage, and advanced stage. All heaven, boundlessly vast. Its origins are unknown, so how does one find the method to cross it? Success equals an eternal golden body, whereas failure equals eternal damnation from the path to immortality. This was the description of the all-heaven level in an ancient scripture. It meant that the all-heaven level was boundless and unfathomable. There was no technique that allowed one to surmount it smoothly, and one could only rely on one's own ability to attain it. If one successfully advanced into the all-heaven level, then one would attain an eternal body that had a lifespan that was equal to the heavens. One would be able to move freely through space, wander through the 3 dimensions and the universe, and disregard the barriers of the various laws. However, if one failed, then one would transform into the ash beneath the tribulation while one's foundation in the path towards immortality would be destroyed. Even if one was able to survive, it would be impossible for one to attain the Tao and immorality again. This showed exactly how difficult it was to attain the all-heaven level. In Tao Emperor Academy, perhaps golden immortals could be seen all over, but if it was in a place like Eastern Peace Continent, then a golden immortal could become the ruler of an area and take control of numerous cities. The simplest difference was that golden immortals had grasped golden immortal laws, and they condensed all heaven divine crests, whereas those beneath the golden immortal realm cultivated in the laws of the grand Tao. Their grasp of the might of the heaven Tao had already differentiated the golden immortal realm from the mysterious immortal and heavenly immortal realms. Xianxia's current situation was that he'd attained perfection in the mysterious immortal realm and wasn't able to advance in the slightest. If he wanted to improve, then he had to find a path towards the golden immortal realm. Yet this path wasn't recorded in any books or scriptures. It wasn't because it was a secret, and it was instead because this path required a cultivator to comprehend it themselves. The path every single person comprehended was completely different. Examples of success can't be found, yet there should be examples of failure to use as reference and avoid mistakes, right? Xianxia was clearly aware that he didn't lack cultivation techniques, medicinal pills, comprehension ability, or natural talent all along his path, and the only thing he lacked was the guidance of a senior. That sort of guidance was usually reflected in cultivation experience. For example, Xianxia could only search and comprehend himself when trying to charge into the golden immortal realm, But if he had the guidance of a senior, then the senior could impart his experience to Xianxia, so that Xianxia could use it as reference. At the very least, Xianxia could avoid taking some wrong paths and save a great deal of time. This was the meaning behind possessing a senior and guidance. Perhaps it's time to head to the scripture reserve to read some books in the scripture pavilion. There ought to be some books to look over there. If I really am not able to find one, then I'll spend some star points and ask for the guidance of some instructors within the academy. Oh, at the very least, those seniors in the Pill Reserve and from the Shenyuan clan will definitely not refuse me. Xianxia pondered deeply for a short while before he stood up. There was only a year left until the inner court exam of the academy, so even if he could still cultivate for 5 years within the world of stars, time would be of no use if he was unable to find a path to the golden immortal realm. So the important matter at hand was to find a path that led to the golden immortal realm. Swoosh! Xianxia left the abode, and his figure flashed as it flew directly towards the scripture reserve. The scripture reserve stored the various books gathered through the countless years Tao Emperor Academy had existed. It wasn't just related to cultivation, and there was even everything else that one expected to find, like books on medicine, astrology, music, Go, and so on and so forth. Moreover, all of them were rare and unique copies that were the only one in existence. They were priceless. Of course, one similarly had to pay star points in order to enter the scripture reserve to read through its books. Moreover, the star points varied according to the book one chose. Fortunately, Xianxia's current wealth was still alright, so he wasn't worried that he would be kicked out of the scripture reserve. The scripture reserve. This was the first time Xianxia had stepped foot into it, and ancient and grand buildings were everywhere the eye could see. These buildings stood towering on the mountain while some stood above lakes, and there were even some that floated above the clouds, causing it to be a rather magnificent scene. Moreover, as soon as he entered this place, he was able to clearly sense layer upon layer of restrictions distributed throughout the heavens and the earth, and even with Xianxia's knowledge in the Tao of Talismans, he still smelled a trace of extreme danger from these restrictions. He didn't doubt in the slightest that if he were to dare move about arbitrarily here, then he would probably be blasted into bits in an instant. Hey, that young man over there. Right, I'm talking to you. Do you need Lord Book Demon to show you the right path? It isn't expensive at all, you only have to pay 1,000 star points. I can help you find the books you need the most. Suddenly, space shook before a 1m tall midget floated into appeared. He had snow-white hair, eyes that were bright and deep, a bearing that was rather scholarly, and a smile on his lips. A book demon. Xianxia was clearly aware that some books within the scripture reserve contained supreme profundities of the Tao and received the purification of immortal energy all day and night, causing some spirits to be born after a long period of time, and these spirits were called book demons. The combat strength of these book demons can't be considered to be formidable at all, but their knowledge was immense. Most of the books stored within the scripture reserve were organized and maintained by these book demons. Senior. Xianxia cupped his hands. He was clearly aware that book demons existed for a rather long period of time. Some were book demons that had been born during the primeval times, and it was even to the extent that the instructors of the academy addressed them respectfully as senior and didn't dare be disrespectful in the slightest. Oh, looks like it's your first time to the scripture reserve, and you don't know me. I'm Benji, and I've existed for 367,321 years. So called me a senior isn't wrong at all. The 1m tall midget spoke in a confident and composed manner, and he was obviously pleased with Xianxia's modest attitude. Let me guess, you're at the advanced stage of the mysterious immortal realm, and you're probably a student of the outer court, whereas the inner court exam is in another year. Thus, you definitely came to the scripture reserve to look for a method to charge into the golden immortal realm. Even though our Tao Emperor Academy Scripture Reserve is said to contain the scriptures of the 3 dimensions and naturally doesn't lack books related to charging into the golden immortal realm, if you were to go look for them yourself, you'd probably be unable to succeed even after a year. When he spoke up to hear, Benji pointed towards the row upon row of ancient buildings in the distance and said, "Look, those buildings are all scripture pavilions, and every single one of them stores at least 10,000 plus books, while some even store over 1 million. Can be said to be vast like an ocean of stars. If you don't have any guidance, then merely looking through those books will exhaust a great deal of your time." Benji talked endlessly about all sorts of things while Xianxia's answer was much simpler and direct instead. He withdrew the violet ribbon starcrest and passed it over. "Please guide me, senior." Sure enough, Benji revealed an expression that seemed as if he felt Xianxia was promising and worthy of guidance. And with a flick of his finger, a buzz sounded out before 1,000 star points had been deducted from Xianxia's violet ribbon starcrest. "Go on, little fellow. The third floor of the 37th Scripture Pavilion contains books related to the Golden Immortal Realm. But I have to warn you that the books there contain the experiences summarized by countless people of the past, and you still have to comprehend the true technique yourself." Benji grinned as he explained. "Thank you, senior." Xianxia cupped his hands before he flew off. This little fellow isn't bad. No wonder that kid Hua Jiankong passed star clasp down to him. As he watched Xianxia leave, Benji muttered before instantly vanishing on the spot, within a pitch-black and ancient hall in the Scripture Reserve. Swoosh! Benji floated into appearance. His 1m tall figure seemed extremely tiny in this extremely spacious and grand hall, but he seemed to not mind all of this. However, at this moment, his expressions carried a trace of reverence. How was it? Suddenly, an ancient and indifferent voice that was filled with supreme dignity resounded within the spacious hall. "His fate is concealed by the secrets of the heavens, and I'm unable to see through it." Benji frowned and pondered deeply before he said, "You ought to be aware that I'm a spirit formed from the Tao is silent scripture, that the Tao Emperor wrote himself, so I'm capable of seeing through the fate and karmic luck of numerous living beings. But a situation like what I encountered with this little fellow is extremely rare. Did you deduce the reason for it?" The ancient and dignified voice was silent for a long time before it resounded once again. "There are many reasons, but I feel that the biggest possibility is that an extraordinarily great figure utilized the might of the secrets of the heavens to conceal his fate." Benji's frown grew deeper as he said, "Of course, it's also possible that he possesses an unknown and mysterious precious treasure that concealed his fate. But this sort of situation is extremely unlikely. At the very least, since the primeval times until now, only a small group of people were able to possess such a precious treasure. The truth behind fate comes from the movement of the heaven Tao. There aren't many in the entire 3 dimensions that are able to utilize the might of the secrets of the heavens. If you say this, then wouldn't there be an existence on par with the dean standing behind that young man?" The ancient and dignified voice was slightly low and heavy, and it seemed to have fallen into an unfathomable sort of feeling. "Perhaps it was the dean himself that did it. You ought to be clearly aware that Starclasp is in that young man's possession now." Benji spoke abruptly. The hall turned deathly silent as soon as these words were spoken. After a long time, when he saw that the ancient and dignified voice didn't speak for so long, Benji couldn't refrain himself and said, "In my opinion, it's truly unwise for the juniors of your clan to go against that young man. Even if you want to make that young man a whetstone to sharpen the juniors of your clan, the disadvantages will probably outweigh the benefits." A whetstone. Sure enough, the ancient and dignified voice resounded once more when he heard Benji, and it carried an indescribably complicated feeling as he sighed. "His fate is concealed, and he has obtained the Starclasp Immortal Sword. How could that young man possibly be a whetstone?" When he spoke up to hear, he changed the topic. "Since it was created until now, my Dragon Dimension's greatest enemy has always been itself, because being unable to break through the shackles of one's own self will make it impossible for one to attain great achievements. If that young man is able to enter the inner court a year from now..." Benji suddenly raised his head and waited silently for the voice to continue. "Never mind. I'll decide when the time comes." In the end, the ancient and dignified voice didn't give a clear answer, and this caused Benji to be unable to avoid from feeling disappointed. He cupped his hands before he turned around and left. There were many scripture pavilions within the Scripture Reserve. They formed a dense mass that seemed like trees standing in a forest, and even with the guidance of the book demon Benji, Xianxia still spent a great deal of time before he found the 37th Scripture Pavilion. It was a black-clothed old man that was looking after this pavilion, and he said frankly upon noticing Xianxia, Reading a single book on the first floor requires 3,000 star points, the second floor requires 5,000 star points, the third floor requires 8,000 star points. Which floor do you intend to go to? The corners of Xianxia's mouth twitched imperceptibly. He really hadn't expected that the books on the third floor would require 8,000 star points each. Fortunately, his clone had been accepting and completing assignments in the Tao of Talismans all day and night in the past year. The amount of assignments completed each day varied, but he'd earned a great deal of star points after a year of accumulation. Coupled with the star points he earned at the Tao Development Reserve that day, he possessed over 7 million star points, and it could be considered as a great amount of wealth. Thank you for your guidance, Senior. I intend to head to the third floor. Xianxia cupped his hands. Go on. The Academy will automatically deduct your star points when you read a book. So, you better not read them carelessly so as to avoid losing all your star points before you know it. The old man waved his hand before allowing Xianxia to enter the pavilion. The scripture pavilion had a world of its own within it. Every single floor was comparable to a small city while bookshelves stood like trees in a forest within it. And they were filled with a dazzling array of jade slips, beast skins, silk, books. As soon as he entered here, it was like he'd entered an ocean of books, and it was shocking. If I'd been reading the books here since I was born, then I would probably not need so many years to advance to my current cultivation realm, right? This is the difference in resources. All along my path of cultivation, I had to work hard and strive to obtain anything I needed, whereas the disciples of those great powers arrived at the immortal dimension as soon as they were born. Moreover, since they were young, they had countless medicinal pills and herbs to consume, the guidance of numerous seniors, and innumerable books and scriptures to read. It was impossible for their cultivation to be slow. However, every single person has their own path. Cultivation is never something that's only on paper. Even though I lack a great deal of resources, those disciples can't compare with the experience and tempering I received during my path. As he swept the dense array of various books and scriptures with his gaze, Xianxia sighed greatly in his heart, but he quickly restrained his thoughts and walked directly towards the third floor. There were numerous books stored on the third floor as well. When Xianxia arrived here, he noticed to his slight surprise that many students of the outer court were here. It was mostly senior students, yet there was no lack of new students. It was even to the extent that Xianxia saw Zhongli Sun, Ma Qiyan, Shen Yuanyun, and the others were all before the bookshelves, and they were silently reading the books from it. Looks like all of them have stopped before the threshold of the golden immortal realm just like me, whereas Zhongli Sun and the others probably intend to strive to participate in the inner court exam 1 year from now. Xianxia seemed to be lost in thought. Xianxia, what are you doing here? He's the leader of the Star Alliance. Xianxia? Xianxia's arrival drew the attention of many people, and it caused an uproar. In next to no time, the students that were originally comprehending the books had raised their heads successively to look at Xianxia, and they revealed varied expressions. Xianxia was stunned. The leader of the Star Alliance? He hadn't expected that he would gain another method of address after only a year. The leader of the Star Alliance. The Star Alliance? It only possesses a little over 10 members until now. It's fine if it's just for fun, but it's simply a piece of trash when compared with the other student societies. Someone grunted coldly, and it seemed to be extremely sudden. Xianxia frowned as he looked over. Sure enough, he saw a familiar face, Wuxia. At this moment, Wuxia was standing before a bookshelf while sneering with disdain at Xianxia. Some people frowned while others took pleasure when they saw Wuxia provoking Xianxia. But Xianxia's answer was very simple instead, and he directly asked Shen Yuanyun, "Am I allowed to beat people up in the scripture pavilions?" As soon as these words were spoken, Wuxia's face turned grim while he looked slightly vigilantly at Xianxia, because he was really worried that Xianxia would disregard everything and bash him up. No. The restrictions will be activated as soon as fluctuations of immortal force arises. In that way, even if you were able to beat up your opponent, you'll be driven out of the scripture pavilion, and you won't be allowed to take a single step in for 3 years. Shen Yuanyun shook his head. Xianxia sighed with slight disappointment, and then he looked at Wuxia and said, You can't decide if the Star Alliance is weak or not. If you're unconvinced, then you can head to the Tao Development Reserve to challenge me. I can refuse the challenges of the others, but I'll give you a chance. As soon as he finished speaking, Xianxia turned around and walked towards the bookshelves at the side, and he couldn't be bothered to spare another glance to Wuxia. Everyone else looked at Wuxia with amused expressions. Brother, if I were you, I'll definitely be unable to swallow this. Right? You must issue a challenge if you're a man. Oh, forget it. I think he doesn't have the balls to fight Xianxia, and he only knows how to talk. Students from top powers like Xianxia weren't afraid of Wuxia, so when they saw this opportunity, they instantly stuck a pin where there was room and tried to fan the flames with a ridiculing tone. Wuxia's face sank while utter humiliation arose in his heart. But he didn't dare to challenge Xianxia at all. So in the end, he grunted coldly and left hastily. Damnable bastard. You better not participate in the inner court exam 1 year from now. Otherwise, just you wait and see. What the fuck? Do you really think you've attained success? You're simply tired of living. Wuxia roared furiously in his heart. Xianxia, your Star Alliance isn't as useless as Wuxia made it seem. After Wuxia left, Xianxia came over and said to Xianxia in a low voice, "Presently, everyone in the academy knows of the existence of the Star Alliance, and countless new students are fighting to enter it." Xianxia was stunned, and he said with a teasing tone, "Then why are there only 10 or so members?" "That's because of the threshold." Xianxia smiled. "The requirements of my clan's little princess towards the establishment of the Star Alliance is very high, and not just anyone can enter it. They must pass numerous tests and obtain her approval." Tests? Xianxia was slightly surprised. Right, those that register to join the Star Alliance must first have a clean background and are not the spies sent over by some other power. Next, their character would be tested before finally judging their natural talent and strength. Xianxia spoke confidently. Only in this way can the solidity of the Star Alliance's foundation be guaranteed. This was also done for the sake of long-term development in the future. For example, the Star Alliance has already been praised as one of the student societies with the greatest potential, and it isn't just renowned in the outer court, it even has a good reputation in the inner court. Most importantly, numerous new students are working hard now with the objective of entering the Star Alliance, and it has already formed into a storm now. I believe that the Star Alliance will definitely strengthen swiftly once you enter the inner court, and it'll become ranked in the top 100 powers within the academy. She had never imagined that Xianxia had developed the Star Alliance to such an extent within a single year, and besides being shocked, he was rather moved. "I really have to thank Xianxia for this," said Xianxia after taking a deep breath. He was very clearly aware that even if he managed it on his own, he would probably be unable to do so outstandingly like Xianxia. "Right, what are those top 100 powers?" asked Xianxia. "Oh, they're the top 100 student societies in the academy. Once you enter the inner court, you'll be able to see a stone stele called the Supremacy Golden Rankings, and it lists the rankings of the top 100 student societies." Xianxia explained. "This is also a form of encouragement from the academy to the students. After all, practically all those students that were able to graduate from the academy will transform into an overlord within the immortal dimension, and command and control of a power is also a form of tempering and fostering towards students." She came to a sudden understanding. This time, he deeply understood exactly how extraordinary the meaning of the Tao Emperor Academy was to the immortal dimension. It was simply the cradle for all the top figures in the immortal dimension. Xianxia chatted with Xianxia for a while before turning around and leaving. Xianxia placed his attention onto the bookshelves in the 3rd floor as well, and he started to look through them carefully. The Secret Records of Words, written by the head instructor Xiaoyu of the primeval times. It explains in detail the profundities of the all-heaven level, and it's an exceptional and only copy of the book. Discussions and 36 answers of the true essence of the all-heaven level. Written by the Outer Court's Dean Zhou Zhili. It records 36 techniques to advance into the all-heaven level. Supreme Tao Seeker Notes, 7 Reflections of Truth, Divine Heaven Illustrated Book. The books in the 3rd floor weren't cultivation techniques, and they were all experiences related to the golden immortal realm. Some described and some discussed, and it was filled with the knowledge and comments of countless predecessors. She still remembered the warning of the black-clothed old man, and he didn't read these books. He just looked at the names and introduction of these books, yet it already caused him to have the feeling of being at a loss for which to choose. Couldn't be helped, there were truly too many books related to charging into the all-heaven level, and it was too comprehensive. Hey, I suggest that you first read the All-Heaven Quintessence Examination written by the Tao Emperor himself all those years ago, and the Profound Views on Breakthrough written casually by that kid, Yun Fuxing, all those years ago. Suddenly, the 1m tall midget, Benji the Book Demon, appeared out of thin air and stood by Xianxi's side as he guided with a grin on his face. And he seemed as if he expected that she wouldn't know which to choose. Of course, don't forget to look through the original manuscript, tracing back the Tao to all heaven, left behind by the Dean. I remember that the valiant star Immortal King comprehended this original manuscript to break through to the golden immortal realm in one go. She turned around to glance at the surroundings yet noticed that no one had noticed the appearance of Benji, and he was shocked in his heart. He finally understood that the cultivation of this book demon was definitely unfathomable, and it might even be an ancient senior of the scripture reserve. Thank you for your guidance, senior. She cupped his hands. I didn't guide you for nothing. Benji grinned as he spoke. She understood the meaning behind his words and casually handed over the violet ribbon starcrest to Benji. However, when she got his violet ribbon starcrest back once more, he noticed that 50,000 star points had actually been deducted. The corners of his mouth instantly couldn't help but twitch, and he was slightly surprised and felt slight agony. The book demon Benji couldn't help but speak angrily when he saw Xi's reaction. Kid, you've gained a huge benefit. I wouldn't agree to guide others even if they want to pay me with star points. She muttered in his heart. Who knows if you're deceiving me or not? It was even to the extent that she suspected Benji had used these same words to deceive many students in the academy. After all, this fellow seemed to be too warm towards him and took such initiative to help him. As it was said, everyone has an objective when doing something, and there's no kindness without reason. She didn't believe that a pie would drop down from the heavens and just happen to fall onto him. Alas, looks like I've wasted my efforts again. All those years ago, Yun Fuxing cursed me for cheating away his star points, yet I never expected that you would be the same. Why is it so hard to do something good? Benji shook his head and sighed as if he was hurt and disappointed. Even though he spoke like this, he vanished swiftly, and he'd instantly vanished into thin air before she could even speak. This fellow has definitely deceived many people in these past few years. She felt even more certain that Benji couldn't be trusted. However, he quickly discarded the distracting thoughts in his mind and started to search through the row after row of bookshelves for the books that Benji mentioned. He wanted to confirm if those 3 books, the All-Heaven Quintessence Examination, Profound Views on Breakthrough, and Tracing Back the Tao to All Heaven were worth 50,000 star points. In next to no time, she found one of them. It was the All-Heaven Quintessence Examination written by the Tao Emperor himself. This book wasn't actually the work of the Tao Emperor, and it was only commented on and explained by the Tao Emperor. In other words, the appearance of this book ought to before the primeval Tao Emperor attained the Tao. The reason was very simple, commenting and explaining was the interpretation and perception of the later generations. When he saw the name of the true author, Xianxi's eyes couldn't help but constrict slightly, while his heart shook, because it was Fuxi. It was actually Fuxi. It was as if a rock had been thrown into Xianxi's heart, and it caused 1,000 of layers of waves to surge. Why is there a book written by Senior Fuxi within the academy? Could it be that there's a relationship between the primeval Tao Emperor and Senior Fuxi? Xianxia took a few deep breaths before he finally felt that even if the book demon Benji had tricked him off his 50,000 star points, but it was worth to be able to read a book written by Senior Fuxi. After all, since he started cultivating until now, practically all the inheritances he cultivated had come from the manor, and the manor belonged to Fuxi. It was even to the extent that, strictly speaking, Xianxia was already a personal disciple of Oracle Mountain now. At this moment, he naturally had a pleasantly surprised feeling, as if he'd obtained a precious treasure when he saw a book written by Fuxi. He flipped open the first page, Swoosh! 8,000 star points were deducted from him. This caused Xianxia's mind to sober up greatly, and he laughed bitterly in his heart. Sure enough, if I want to obtain something from the academy, then I have to pay the price for it. But right after that, Xianxia couldn't be bothered to think about all of this because his mind and soul had been completely occupied by the contents of the book. The Tao of a golden immortal is subtle yet obvious. It's formed into divine crests that describe the principles behind the traces of the heavens. In this realm, the heart and Tao fuse as one while technique and body do the same. It's comprehended in the Tao, and it allows one to see a glimpse, yet know its entirety. Every single word and even every single stroke of an extraordinary existence like Fuxi contains supreme profundities, and if one tried to figure it out carefully, one would even be able to comprehend a myriad of auras of the Tao within every single word. Even with Xianxia's extraordinary comprehension ability, he had to fathom and digest it for a long time after reading a short passage, and he only started reading the next passage after he completed this, otherwise it would be impossible for him to continue reading. Yes, Xianxia didn't look at the comments and explanation of the Tao Emperor, and directly read the original text. So what he comprehended from it naturally came from his own knowledge of the Grand Tao. He did this for the sake of completely comprehending this book before slowly verifying what he'd comprehended with the comments and explanations of the Tao Emperor. In this way, he would be able to obtain even more comprehension. As it was said, use all resources before drawing an analogy. The scripture pavilion was extremely silent. Every single student was silently comprehending different books, and Xianxia was no exception. Presently, he was stuck at the end of the mysterious immortal realm, and he was only lacking a final piece of comprehension before he would be able to find a path that led to the golden immortal realm. However, breaking through carried risks as well, especially when one charged into the golden immortal realm. Once the path one chose was flawed, then one would suffer a tribulation, and even if one was able to survive it, it would be impossible for one to continue on the path to immortality. So even if it was the disciples of great powers that were conceited and proud to the extreme, they became extremely cautious when dealing with this barrier, and they didn't dare be careless at all. Xianxia naturally wouldn't be careless at all either. But he would also not restrain his Tao heart because of being excessively worried. At this moment, he actually didn't have any time to consider the matter of breaking through at all because his entire mind and heart were already drawn by the profundities within the all-heaven quintessence examination, and he was immersed within it and unable to free himself from it. It was written personally by Fuxi himself, and it was the simplest perception of the golden immortal realm. There were no techniques to break through written within it, yet it allowed one to comprehend the most essential knowledge of the golden immortal realm. The profundities within it couldn't be considered to be difficult to understand or obscure, yet it was boundlessly broad and profound. It was absolutely not something that could be fully comprehended overnight. However, at this moment, Xianxia was completely unaware of the passage of time. An entire month later, some students had left while others had come to the third floor of the scripture pavilion, and only Xianxia sat cross-legged on the spot without moving at all. He was like a clay statue that was completely silent. Is he comprehending the Tao? Perhaps he is, or perhaps he isn't. Oh, I think he might be accepting assignments in the assignment area of the Violet Ribbon Starcrest. He completed many assignments in the Tao of Talismans lately. Strange, he's completing assignments in the Scripture Pavilion? Xianxia really doesn't do things like a normal person. Perhaps the pressure on him is too great, and he wants to participate in the inner court exam that's about to start yet isn't willing to miss the opportunity to earn star points. So he can only do this. Alas, if Xianxia was a disciple from a top power, then he would have probably far surpassed Jinlu, Zhao Mingli, and the others a long time ago. Yeah, those disciples of top powers don't have to worry about earning star points, and they can just concentrate on charging into the golden immortal realm. How can Xianxia compare with them like this? Right? I heard that Ji Xinbing and Zhao Mingli have headed to the all-heaven golden rankings to test their strengths, and they've both ascended into the top 50. Yes, I heard of it as well. Zhongli Sun, Jiang Canghai, Ao Wuming, and the others are tempering themselves at the illusory heaven immortal domain as well, and they'll probably test themselves at the all-heaven golden rankings as soon as they're done. Less than a year remains before the inner court exam will begin, yet Chun, she is still unable to step into the golden immortal realm. How worrisome! 1 year ago, he was still only at the initial stage of the mysterious immortal realm, yet he intends to charge into the golden immortal realm 1 year later. Even I feel that he practically has no hope. In short, we can only wait and see. So long as they discern Chun-Shi's identity, then everyone within the pavilion would discuss him, and the content of their discussions was mostly related to the inner court exam that would be held soon. After all, along with the approach of the inner court exam that was held once every 10 years, the atmosphere in the outer court had become even more tense. There were students heading to Dao Seek Mountain at practically every single moment in order to observe the change in ranking on the All-Heaven Golden rankings. There were also many students that sped up their cultivation and tempered their strengths madly. They either exchanged their star points for some treasured or some medicinal pills that were beneficial towards improving their combat strength. They could be said to have used every means available to them as they prepared to participate in the inner court exam. Because the only target they had to achieve to participate in the inner court exam was to be ranked in the top 50 of the All-Heaven Golden rankings. Unfortunately, up until now, Chun-Shi's name hadn't appeared on the All-Heaven Golden rankings, let alone become ranked in the top 50. The reason was naturally very simple. He still hadn't been able to break through into the golden immortal realm. This drew the attention of many students from the outer court. Some were worried, some remained indifferent, and some were certain that Chun-Shi was bound to be unable to participate in the inner court exam this time. After all, he was only at the initial stage of the mysterious immortal realm 1 year ago, so he practically had no hope of advancing into the golden immortal realm before the inner court exam. On the second month after he entered the 3rd floor of the scripture pavilion, Chun-Shi, who was like a statue, had finally opened his eyes. His eyes seemed to vast and profound while he stared blankly, and he seemed to be in a state of comprehension. After that, he put down the All-Heaven Quintessence examination, and he searched for the book, Profound Views on Breakthrough, written by Yun Fuxing and tracing back the Tao to All-Heaven that the dean had left behind. On the 3rd month, Chun-Shi had finished comprehending these 2 books. He contemplated in concentration for an entire 3 days and night before he stood up and started reading the other books on the 3rd floor. Supreme Tao Seek Notes. 7 Reflections of Truth. Divine Heaven Illustrated Book. The reading this time was unlike the comprehension from before. Chun-Shi's speed had obviously increased, and it was even to the extent that it had attained a shocking state. He practically finished a book every 15 minutes. This scene caused many students to be surprised and even shocked. It was common knowledge that all these books that could be gathered within the scripture pavilion were precious in the world, and they contained boundless profundities. Ordinary students required at least 3 months or even 3 to 5 years to completely comprehend a single book. Even if it was a peerless figure with extraordinary comprehension ability, it was impossible for that person to completely comprehend a book every 15 minutes. So Chun-Shi's display at this moment was extremely conspicuous and puzzling. This fellow Chun-Shi wouldn't have been overcome by his inner demons, right? Alas, he's probably determined to participate in the inner court exam. Yet he has been unable to break through for so long. Perhaps it has caused his Tao heart to lose balance. If this continues, then it'll be extremely harmful to his cultivation. Should we go advise him? Hey you? He's the first amongst the new students and unparalleled at the mysterious immortal realm. What qualifications do you have to advise him? Chun-Shi remained indifferent towards all these discussions, and he continued reading the numerous books that were written by the great figures of the past at a constant speed. These sort of actions continued until the 4th month. On this day, even the black-clothed old man that looked after the scripture pavilion was alarmed, and he arrived hastily to the 3rd floor. His brows couldn't help but knit extremely tightly together when he saw Chun-Shi, who was swiftly flipping through the books. His heart and mind are listless while his vital energy is flowing indeterminately. Is he comprehending the Tao? Or has he been overcome by his inner demons? As an instructor of the scripture reserve, he'd seen many students comprehend the Tao while looking after the scripture pavilion, yet he'd never seen someone in a state like Chun-Shi's. But if Chun-Shi was said to have been overcome by his inner demons, it just happened to not conform to the symptoms. This caused his brows to knit together even more tightly. In the end, out of consideration for the safety of Xianxia, he decided to wake Xianxia up and ask Xianxia exactly what was going on. However, right when he was about to approach Xianxia, he was suddenly stopped by the book demon, Benji. Could it be that you've forgotten Yun Fuxing from all those years ago? It was only a single sentence, yet it caused the old man to stop abruptly while revealing a shocked expression. And then the scene of Yun Fuxing reading books all those years ago flashed into his mind. It was just as Xianxia was. The books flashed by, yet he wasn't in a state of Tao comprehension, nor had he been overwhelmed by his inner demons. And he was truly comprehending and understanding the profundities of the books. However, their ability of understanding and deduction had obviously attained an unbelievable and astonishing level. Thus the state they were in seemed to be completely different from the other students. Yun Fuxing? If another Yun Fuxing can appear in the academy, then the Zuoqiu clan will definitely be unable to eat and sleep in peace. The old man seemed to have thought of something, causing a wisp of sorrow to appear on his face before he shook his head in the end, and then he turned around and left. What sort of ability of discernment is that? It's definitely impossible for Xianxia to be a second Yun Fuxing because even Yun Fuxing wasn't so. Benji sighed in his heart and stared at Xianxia for a long time before he vanished into thin air in the end. On the 5th month since he entered the scripture pavilion, Xianxia finally stopped what he was doing, and then stood on the spot as he pondered deeply. This caused all the students that were paying attention to Xianxia's actions to be unable to help but heave a sigh of relief. It seemed as if they wouldn't be able to endure it if Xianxia continued on like this. These people included Shenyuan Yun. He frequently came over to the scripture pavilion in the past 5 months. On one hand, it was to comprehend the content of the books, and on the other hand, he was frequently paying attention to the station she was in so as to avoid any mishaps from occurring. The reason he did this was obviously because of Axios instructions. Xianxia, where are you going? When he noticed that Xianxia actually intended to leave the scripture pavilion, Shenyuan Yun instantly recovered from his shock and hurriedly went over to ask Xianxia. The Tao development reserves illusory heaven immortal domain. Xianxia's expression was calm, while the space between his brows carried a slightly dazed expression, as he seemed to have still not fully woken up from that strange state of comprehension he was in before. You've already found the path to breakthrough? Shenyuan Yun was shocked in his heart when he heard this, and he looked at Xianxia with surprise and admiration. As soon as these words were spoken, it drew the attention of the nearby students as well, and all of them were extremely shocked as they successively shot their gazes towards Xianxia. Xianxia didn't notice all of this and nodded casually before he turned and left. At this moment, various comprehensions were surging in his heart, and only by seizing this opportunity to verify them at the illusory heaven immortal domain would he be able to grasp them completely. At that time, it would be the moment he broke through. When they saw Xianxia nod, everyone including Shenyuan Yun was shocked. He comprehended the path to break through into the golden immortal realm after staying in the scripture pavilion for 5 months? This was simply something they didn't dare imagine. After all, advancing into the golden immortal realm was truly too difficult, and everyone relied on their fortune and comprehension ability. Moreover, no matter how extraordinary one's natural talent was, if one didn't possess this fortune and comprehension ability, then it would be utterly impossible for one to touch the threshold towards the golden immortal realm. But Xianxia had used less than half a year to find his path to the golden immortal realm. If news of this were to be spread, then it would definitely cause a mighty uproar in the academy. Wait, I'll go with you. Shenyuan Yun hurriedly followed up when he saw Xianxia's figure vanish from the 3rd floor. He wasn't willing to miss the moment Xianxia advanced into the golden immortal realm because it would be greatly beneficial to his own advancement if he was able to observe Xianxia's advancement. Not to mention that he'd wanted to experience the illusory heaven immortal domain a long time ago. Illusory heaven immortal domain. This was a vast and mysterious space created by the Tao Emperor himself, and it was specially prepared to temper the students of the academy. Swoosh! A tall figure tore through the sky and arrived at the entrance of the domain in the blink of an eye. An ancient and vast Tao platform floated there, and many figures were standing on it at this moment. Moreover, many figures were ceaselessly flashing over from all directions. Before the Tao platform was a pitch-black vortex-like space that warped and surged. It was the entrance to the illusory heaven immortal domain. This is the entrance of the illusory heaven immortal domain? Xianxia looked at the warped and vortex-like space, and he was astounded in his heart as he sensed the terrifying fluctuations emanated from it. This was the immortal dimension, and the laws of the heaven Tao were extremely solid. Yet the Tao Emperor had forcefully opened up a vast space within it that was specially prepared for tempering the students of the academy. This extraordinary ability was unimaginable to an ordinary person. Cousin brother, it's your first time at the illusory heaven immortal domain, so there are some things you need to know. There are a total of 108 levels within this illusory heaven immortal domain. The first 36 levels are prepared for the mysterious immortal realm, the next 36 are prepared for the golden immortal realm, and the final 36 are prepared for experts at the saint immortal realm. Mysterious immortal realm experts have to pay 800,000 star points when they enter, while golden immortals have to pay 1,800,000 star points. As for saint immortals, then have to pay 5 million star points for each entrance. Right now, 800,000 star points is a great amount of wealth for you, so you must give it your all once you enter. You don't need to break any records, and all I expect of you is to charge through until the 18th level. When Xianxia stopped at the side, there was a young man that was explaining what should be paid attention to while in the illusory heaven immortal domain to his cousin brother. Xianxia has already found out from many books that tempering oneself within the illusory heaven immortal domain was a method of self-breakthrough. For example, at the first level, an enemy with a strength around one's own would appear. At the second level, it would become 2 enemies. It would be 3 at the third level. Up until the 36th level, one's strength would be able to transform into a state of extreme perfection, and it carried an inconceivable effect towards dealing with bottlenecks in one's cultivation. In the countless years of the past, many students of the outer court had challenged themselves through this method, and they experienced a great deal of tempering before finally stepping foot into the golden immortal realm. Moreover, Xianxia was also aware that even though the tests of the illusory heaven immortal domain encompass combat technique and martial Tao will, its greatest importance was still to unearth the potential of students when forced to their limits, while one's own cultivation and strength wasn't of much effect. After all, the opponents within the illusory heaven immortal domain possessed strengths that were roughly similar to the person, so the opponent's strength would be maintained at a similar level as the person. So it turns out that the first amongst us new students has come as well. No wonder I felt that he was slightly similar from all over there. Could it be that he intends to challenge the illusory heaven immortal domain in order to charge into the golden immortal realm? Meanwhile, a sarcastic voice resounded, and it carried a ridiculing and mocking tone. As soon as these words were spoken, Xianxia instantly felt many gazes shooting over towards him. He frowned slightly as he raised his eyes and looked over. He saw the robust figure Ao Wuming was looking at him from afar with a surprised expression. It has to be. I heard that this first amongst us new students has always been accepting assignments in the Tao of Talismans lately. Obviously, he was preparing to enter the illusory heaven immortal domain. After all, one has to spend 800,000 star points to enter a single time. Xianxia, who stood by Ao Wuming's side, smiled lightly as he said, "This little bit of star points is naturally nothing to us, but it's a bit too much to Chen Shi. He's currently the leader of the Star Alliance and has over 10 subordinates that he has to take care of, so it's excusable that his finances are tight." His words were perfectly logical and reasonable, yet they seemed to intentionally reveal a proud and ridiculing tone. When it entered into the ears of everyone else present here, it was obviously no different from mocking Chen Shi. Many people felt that Ao Wuming and Xianxia were going too far, but no one dared to speak out and denounce them for it. It couldn't be helped. One of them was a descendant of an azure dragon from the dragon dimension, while the other was a disciple from one of the 7 great ancient clans, the Jiang clan. Both of their backgrounds were monstrous. Thus, no one would go against them. When faced with this, Xianxia just silently glanced at Ao Wuming and Xianxia before he said, "I hope both of you will be there during the inner court exam. Otherwise it would be too boring." Zhao Mingli had spoken these words to him in the past. Now he'd spoken them to Ao Wuming and Xianxia, and his intentions were naturally obvious. He turned around and flashed towards the vortex-shaped space before the Tao platform as soon as he finished speaking. The surroundings of the warped vortex space seemed to be covered in a layer of faint restrictions. When Xianxi's figure entered, he heard a buzz before 800,000 star points were deducted from his violet ribbon star crest, and his figure had instantly vanished within the depths of the vortex. Humph! What shameless boasting! He's still thinking about sparring with us during the inner court exam? Let me see if you're able to advance into the golden immortal realm when there's less than 5 months remaining. Ao Wuming couldn't help but laugh coldly when he heard what Xianxia said before leaving. Haha! Don't forget that, even if he enters into the golden immortal realm, he won't be able to participate in the inner court exam without ascending into the top 50 of the all-heaven golden rankings. Zhang Zonghai spoke indifferently with a smile on his face. Right at this moment, a wisp of divine light suddenly flashed into appearance on a floating stone stele at the side of the Dao platform. What? Zhongli soon actually broke the record and is ranked 10th. The crowd was bustling while exclaims of shock rose and fell. It was the passage stone stele, and only existences that charged through the 36 levels of the illusory heaven immortal domain in the shortest amount of time could be ranked on it. Moreover, the stone stele merely revealed the top 10 names. For example, the first was surprisingly Yun Fuxing. He'd utilized 45 minutes and 32 breaths of time, and he reigned supreme at the position of first for countless years. His record hadn't been broken until now. This was a form of supreme glory. But most importantly, those that were able to pass through the levels smoothly and have their names on the passage stone stele could obtain 10,000 to 1 million star points every month according to their ranking. Of course, this passage stone stele was related to the mysterious immortal realm. For example, the first position on it represented Yun Fuxing's results when passing through the first 36 levels of the illusory heaven immortal domain while at the mysterious immortal realm. Moreover, such a stone stele also stood within the 36th level and the 72nd level, and they represented the rankings for the higher levels. If one wanted to be ranked on these passage stone steles, then there was only a single method: break the records made by the others on the stone stele and one would naturally be ranked on it. The 8th is Ji Xianbing, the 9th is Zhao Mingli, and the 5th is Zhen Lu. I never expected that all the new students this time would be so formidable, and they forcefully occupied 4 places on the passage stone stele. This is something that's unprecedented and extraordinary. The crowd exclaimed with admiration and discussed it without end. Humph! Ao Wuming's expression was slightly gloomy, while Zhang Zonghai's expression wasn't much better. Both of them had just emerged from the illusory heaven immortal domain and had smoothly passed through the first 36 levels. Unfortunately, they used too much time to overcome it, so their names weren't able to appear on the passage stone stele. Do all of you think Xianxia will be able to be ranked on the passage stone stele? Oh, that's hard to determine. After all, the stronger one's opponents will be within the domain. So it's a test of combat ability, martial Dao will, and one's own potential when passing through the levels. I think that Xianxia will be able to be ranked on the stele. Don't forget the string of battles he participated in at the Dao development grounds a year ago. It has already proved exactly how formidable his combat strength is. I think the same as well. As they listened to everyone's discussions, Ao Wuming and Zhang Zonghai laughed coldly. They didn't leave and crossed their arms before their chests as if they wanted to see exactly what level Xianxia would be able to climb to. Damn it! I was actually a step too late. Meanwhile, a streak of light shot over from the horizon. It was Shenyuan Yun. He swept the surroundings with his gaze yet noticed Xianxia's figure had vanished, and he instantly struck his chest and stomped his feet while sighing without end. Bang! When Xianxia entered the illusory heaven immortal domain, he felt his vision dim, and then thunderous rumbling echoed throughout the heavens and the earth. It's actually the rumbling of the laws. Xianxia raised his head and saw that the vast space didn't have any aura of life, and it was desolate and deathly silent. On the other hand, the sky roiled with layer upon layer of the energy of the grand Tao laws, and it carried a shocking impetus that was like the rumbling of thunder, causing it to seem extremely astounding. According to what was recorded within the profound views on breakthrough written by Yun Fuxing, everything within the illusory heaven immortal domain is the embodiment of my own strength, whereas the opponents that will appear soon are actually the projection of my own will, cultivation, and strength. Defeating an opponent is actually no different from defeating myself. Xianxia pondered in his heart. The tests will begin in 10 breaths from now. An indifferent voice that carried no emotion at all resounded through the heavens and the earth. Xianxia's heart shook before he took a deep breath, and his gaze instantly became piercingly cold and murderous. During the time he was at the scripture pavilion, he'd read no less than 100 books, so he had numerous obvious thoughts and comprehensions towards breaking through into the golden immortal realm, while he'd come to the illusory heaven immortal domain to use this sort of tempering and surpass himself. He desired to completely grasp and transform everything he'd comprehended in the scripture pavilion into his own strength. This strength was the key to breaking through into the golden immortal realm. 10 breaths of time passed in the blink of an eye. Along with a droning rumble, a figure was condensed into form 3 kilometers away from Xianxia. It was a black-clothed person with a cultivation, will, vital energy, and even imposing aura that was similar to Xianxia. Moreover, their appearances were exactly the same. Clang! An immortal sword appeared in the palm of the black-clothed person, and then his figure flashed as he charged over with sword in hand. He utilized a powerful move as soon as he attacked, and the sword light emanated was fierce and swift like surging lightning as it swept through the horizon. This was an extremely unfamiliar sword move to Xianxia, yet it was fast, fierce, and formidable beyond all doubt. Moreover, it even possessed a strength that surpassed the Supreme Grandmaster level in the Sword Dao just like Xianxia. Swoosh! At the same time, Xianxia moved as well. The star-clasp immortal sword soared through the sky and transformed into a flowing ray of light that flashed closely beside the black-clothed figure's sword chi, while their figures had already crossed each other. Pooh! The black-clothed figure's head shot into the sky while his entire figure transformed into tiny bits of light that vanished into nothingness. A head flew with a single strike. The outcome was decided with a single strike. If this scene were to be seen by the others in the outside world, their jaws would definitely drop to the ground. The reason was simple. Even though the black-clothed figure was condensed into form by a mysterious energy within the illusory heaven immortal domain, its cultivation and strength were on par with the challenger. It was even to the extent that its imposing aura, vital energy, and will were a projection of the challenger, whereas Xianxia was actually able to cleanly slaughter his opponent with a single strike. It proved that his combat technique had arrived at an unbelievable extent when compared to his peers. The facts were indeed so. The black-clothed figure wasn't a living being in the end, so it was impossible for it to possess such abundant combat experience and technique like Xianxia possessed. This first level wasn't difficult. The black-clothed figure's strength was equivalent to mine while its cultivation in the Sword Dao had exceeded the Supreme Grandmaster level. But unfortunately, its combat technique was only average and without anything unique. Xianxia silently pondered on the black-clothed figure's combat strength. First level. Completed in the time of a single breath. An indifferent voice that carried no emotion whatsoever resounded. The voice hadn't finished resounding in the air when an azure glow sweat out from beneath him, and it swept him up. In the next moment, he'd vanished on the spot. When Xianxia opened his eyes next, he'd arrived at the second level of the domain. This place was roughly similar to the first level, but when Xianxia arrived here, there were already 2 black-clothed figures waiting for him. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 strands of sword chi that tore through the sky slashed down at Xianxia. Kill! Xianxia didn't dodge to the side and charge right towards them. Pooh! Pooh! They crossed each other. In the next moment, the 2 black-clothed figures were split into half at the waist, and they died instantly. If it was others that had come here, they would have probably been unable to react in time, let alone crush their opponents so easily like Xianxia. Second level. Completed in the time of a single breath. The indifferent and emotionless voice resounded once more. With Xianxia's current combat strength, he was naturally unhindered in this illusory heaven immortal domain. Moreover, every single time he passed a level, he would be directly sent into the next level. At the same time, the results would be recorded. At the third level was 3 black-clothed figures with similar cultivations and strength as Xianxia. The 4th level had 4. The 5th level had 5. Up until an eighth of an hour later, Xianxia had already slaughtered his way into the 18th level in one go, whereas his opponents had shockingly become 18 black-clothed figures with similar strengths as him. It was at this point that Xianxia finally felt a threat of pressure, and he'd slowed down slightly. According to Xianxia's knowledge, amongst the first 36 levels of the domain, the 18th level was a divide. The cultivation and strength of the black-clothed figures wouldn't increase as he went higher than the 18th level, yet the suppression that came from numbers would start to play a decisive role. For example, Xianxia's opponents on the 18th level was 18 black-clothed figures with similar strengths as him. When they attacked in unison, they even started to cooperate with each other and fight Xianxia by setting up a formation amongst themselves. So the threat they posed would naturally increase greatly. Outside the illusory heaven immortal domain, there was a wall of light at the side of the passage stone steel, and it displayed 36 light green symbols in an orderly manner. They represented the first 36 levels of the domain. When Xianxia entered the domain to challenge these levels, his name had swiftly condensed into a golden symbol, and it started to rise repeatedly until it arrived at the 18th level. The 18th level in an eighth of an hour? A disciple that had been constantly paying attention to Xianxia's attempt couldn't help but exclaim in shock, and he was filled with disbelief. The attention of the others in the vicinity were drawn over as well, and then they revealed slightly dumbstruck expressions. I remember that some seniors of the academy once said that when Yun Fuxing arrived at the 18th level all those years ago, he seemed to have used around an eighth of an hour. Could it be that Xianxia's performance in the domain is actually on par with Yun Fuxing from all those years ago? His speed is too swift. I had the honor to witness Jinlu and Ji Xianbing challenge the illusory heaven immortal domain a few days ago, and I clearly remember that Jinlu had utilized an eighth of an hour and 37 breaths of time to arrive at the 18th level, whereas Ji Xianbing utilized an eighth of an hour and 93 breaths of time. Compared to them, Xianxia's current performance is actually slightly more formidable. That might not necessarily be the case. The Phoenix clan's Zhao Mingli had also utilized an eighth of an hour to arrive at the 18th level, but her subsequent speed was inferior to Zhenlu, and it caused her to be only ranked at the 9th position on the passage stone steel, which is far inferior to Zhenlu, who's ranked at the 5th. Exactly, the key is still his results from the 18th level and above, and it's still too difficult to determine exactly how far Xianxia will go. The crowd discussed animatedly, and they were all curious about Xianxia's final results. They silently took note of the time in their hearts, and they wanted to see if Xianxia was able to make a completely new record or not. Ao Wuming and Jiang Songhai's faces sank when facing this, and they kept silent. No matter how swiftly he gets through the levels, it's useless if he's unable to advance into the golden immortal realm. In the end, Ao Wuming grunted coldly and used this as an excuse to console himself. It's only the 18th level now. Continue watching patiently. Jiang Songhai smiled, yet his smile was slightly forced. Ao Wuming nodded and didn't speak any further. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Numerous terrifying strands of sword chi intersected together within the 18th level, and they covered the heavens and the earth like a world filled with ghastly sword chi. Kill! Xianxia's figure passed through the dense sword chi, while he executed his combat technique to a completely new height. The inheritances of the swords of the 5 elements, wind, lightning, yin, and yang, were easily executed by him and sprayed out like a tide. In an instant, it was impossible to determine exactly how many strikes he'd executed, and it was only possible to see that every single time his figure flashed, a black-clothed figure would be blasted flying. After a short moment, 18th level, completed in the time of a single breath, the indifferent and utterly emotionless voice resounded, and then Xianxia's figure had vanished. Just like this, Xianxia charged all the way with sword in hand, and he advanced triumphantly. Even though the pressure he felt grew steadily as he advanced, it was unable to injure Xianxia. Thus it was naturally impossible to obstruct his footsteps. Hiss! 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 At the 35th level, ball after ball of rain made of light exploded, and it represented black-clothed figures being slaughtered one after the other. At the same time, Xianxia was in a slightly sorry state as he dodged, and he had a serious expression. He truly sensed enormous pressure that was like tidewater that surged towards him from all directions. There were an entire 35 black-clothed figures in the 35th level. Every single one of them had strengths that were equal to his own, and when joined together, if this force was in the outside world, then it would be sufficient to sweep through all the students at the mysterious immortal realm within the outer court. Yet at this moment, Xianxia could only face them by himself. This was a test, and it was a challenge towards his limits. Not bad. I need such pressure in order to unearth even more of my potential. Once I charge through the 36th level, I'll definitely be able to charge into the golden immortal realm. At this moment, Xianxia had clearly grasped a trace of the critical factor he needed to advance. It was so clear as if it was right before his eyes and right within his reach, yet he forcefully restrained himself in the end. It was fine if he didn't advance, but as soon as he did, then he naturally had to attain perfection. Kill! 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 At this moment, Xianxia's battle intent surged, while his body emanated boundless divine radiance. Starclasp seemed to have transformed into a boundless starry sky in his hand, and he'd already brought out most of his potential and was on the verge of hitting his limit. Rumble! A strands of sword chi that overlapped the swords of wind and lightning soared through the air like a gale of lightning, and it whistled as it swept out and directly torn 3 black-clothed figures before him into pieces. At the same time, Xianxia's figure spun as he rose into the air, and slashed apart an expanse of sword chi before suddenly retreating to avoid the assault of another expanse of sword chi. At the same time, he hadn't stopped slashing successively with the sword in his hand. His figure that was like a shadow and his extremely murderous, fierce, and swift attacks caused it to be impossible to differentiate if he was dodging or attacking. Or perhaps, his combat technique was dodging and attacking at the same time, causing his opponents to be unable to lock onto him. Pooh! 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 A few more heads shot into the sky, and then Xianxia suddenly stopped moving. He put Starclasp away with a clang, and when he turned around once more, there was only a single black-clothed figure standing before him. I'm almost there. The corners of Xianxia's mouth curled up slightly as he casually stretched out his index finger and pointed lightly, causing a stream of sword chi to shoot out violently. At this moment, outside the illusory heaven immortal domain. 30 minutes and 35 breaths of time. Looks like Xianxia has been trapped on the 35th level as well. All those years ago, Yun Fuxing seemed to have broken through this level in around this much of time as well. When they saw the golden symbol on the wall of light that represented Xianxia had stopped at the 35th level for a long time, many people heaved sighs of relief in their hearts, and they seemed to feel that only a scene like this was normal. Those black-clothed figures on the 35th level possess a formidable joint attack technique while their cooperation is extremely well. In all these years, many experts have wasted a great amount of time at this level, causing them to have no chance of breaking any records. There's still the 36th level above the 35th level. That's the barrier that's the most difficult to surmount. If Xianxia continues to be delayed here, then even if he enters the 36th level smoothly, he'll be unable to leave his name on the passage stone stele. The others discussed animatedly as well when they heard this. Obviously, they felt that Xianxia didn't have much a great chance to break the records on the passage stone stele. However, right at this moment, the light green symbol that represented the 35th level suddenly dimmed down, and at the same time, the symbol that represented the 36th level suddenly lit up. Everyone was instantly stunned, and they revealed shocked expressions. Ao Wuming and Jiang Songhai's face sank, and their hands beneath their sleeves couldn't help but clench together tightly. How could they be unable to discern that even if the amount of time Xianxia utilized to pass through the 35th level at this moment was slightly inferior to Yun Fuxing from all those years ago, he was slightly swifter than Jinlu, Ji Shenbing, and Zhao Mingli. In other words, so long as Xianxia maintained this sort of combat strength at the 36th level, then it was extremely likely for him to make a new record. I knew it. I knew it would be like this. Xianxia, you have to hold on. So long as you're able to leave your name on the passage stone stele, then the reputation of your Star Alliance will be even more resounding. Shen Yuanyun stared fixedly, and without blinking at the changes on the wall of light from the side, and a wisp of excitement surged out from his heart as he muttered to himself. At this moment, The entire surroundings were deathly silent. Everyone was silently taking notice of the passage of time while waiting to see if Chun Shi would be able to make a new record.